Anytime you're ready, Mr. Yap.
Cùng xin ta tơ sân thiện, về sư hòa huệ chi y chế chúng sinh, xin gia妙hòa luân giáo导我们如何了生他是离苦得乐。真无生Avatamsaka weekly virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings. Present the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and birth and death and quickly release non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed Okay, I'll give you all the line. Okay, I'll give you a line and you all give it back to me, okay? Nammo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Your turn. Can you all do it so I can hear it? Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Your turn. Nammo sadanto suchedoye olahudi sanmiao sanputoshi. Okay, let's all recite together. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa bai qian wan jie nan zhao yu.
道义，
我今见
愿
闻得
闻得受持，
愿
愿
解
解如
如来
来
真。
真实义。
Okay, I'll give you a line, you give it back. Ready? Here we go. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a million eons.
Million years.
But now we see and hear it,
Now they are
and accept it reverently. May we truly understand
understand.
the Buddha's actual meaning.
Without achievement.
师父上人, Venerable Master, Dharma friends, Amitofo, good evening. Welcome to our sutra lecture tonight. That hiccup, that glitch that we heard when we were requesting, what happened was I had my browser open and I was watching my own broadcast. So we heard the Dharma request looped only 3 minutes later. It took that long for the sound to come all the way back to Australia. So you have to always remind me to close my browser so I won't watch my own broadcast. That gets me into trouble. So welcome to our sutra lecture tonight. This is the Avatamsaka 10 Grounds chapter, Flower Garland Sutra. We're going to continue where we left off last week. And I got a very powerful story tonight. You know, in years past at the Berkeley Monastery, we used to conclude every sutra lecture with story time. And our young people, back then we had our Saturday school waiting for the sutra lecture to finish so they could come in and join their parents and the adults and listen to stories. So when the kids grew up and graduated, we kind of story time just kind of dropped off the program. But I found a really, really wonderful story. And the story is about the power of music and the healing power of music. And it involves the Juilliard School in Manhattan. And it's a story set in September 11th, actually September 12th, 2001, which is one of those days that we always recall. So I've got a great story, and that'll come up at the end of our lecture. So let us now begin. How are we going to begin? We're going to go here and recite the Chinese. It's down there at the bottom of the page. There we go. This is an invocation. It's an invitation. It's a wish that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garland Sutra will draw near and bless those of us who are listening online, wherever you are around the world, and also those of us here in Australia, which includes Sam and Cliff and Phil and Mary and Tracy, and everybody who is sitting in Berkeley, California, listening in person to the Sutra lecture. So with that in mind, let's be sincere and make that request. 南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。南无大方广佛华严经，华严海会佛菩萨。Okay. So I want to thank everybody who took the time to come out on a Saturday night. It's a day of big rain. It's actually a week of big rain here in southeastern Queensland, and it's only 12:30 here in the afternoon. So people have already been here this morning for meditation and for ceremony, and so they stay for the sutra lecture. But those of you in Berkeley, you came on a Saturday night to hear the sutra, which is shows a lot of sincerity. And it's, as Master Hua would tell us, when we come together to, he would say, Ru Fa, to request the Dharma according to the traditional methods, according to the way it's always been done. He said there's real goodness involved in that. There's wholesome energy there because the way it's always been done, the sutra lectures are a place where spiritual beings gather. The Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the eightfold pantheon of spiritual kings in the animal and spiritual world, and Dharma protectors of all kinds, as well as good people, come to hear the Dharma, hear the sutra. And whenever that kind of gathering happens, there's a lot of wholesome energy. So they're simply hoping that people will use the old methods to look into wisdom and to help the world turn. That was how Master Hua explained it. This is really necessary for the keeping everything in the universe in orbit and on track. So, of course, what do we see? We see folks, sitting in a Buddha hall or sitting on a chair at home in front of your computer. Seems like normal reality, right? And we don't see all that spiritual activity. But Master Hua said, 你们还早啊，你们就要诚心一点，就会。We're still early. We're still wet behind the ears. But if we're sincere, all of that's visible to people who are pure and concentrated and focused, we'll be able to see all of that as well. So, excuse me, that's how the tradition teaches it. So, until that time, we'll just do our part. All right, here's our sutra, put together by some wholesome Dharma friends, which we appreciate them patching it together this way, with Chinese on the left side in 3 different versions, and English on the right side. So we're right here. If you've got it in front of you, it's what page? Page 72. And here's the Chinese. And let's see here. Okay, now we've got the Chinese on the screen. If you can see it, I'm going to put my palms together and recite along, and you're welcome to join me. Okay, we'll start right here with the 佛子 piru rigwang right there. Okay, here we go. Ready? 佛子, you do a line. 佛子 piru rigwang, piru rigwang, 星月等光，无能及者，眼复提地，所有泥疗，其能干结。Okay, next two lines. 此原行地菩萨，亦复如是。一切二圣，无能sorry, my mistake. 无有能及，悉能干结一切众生，主获泥疗。Okay, next two lines. Here we go. One more. 此菩萨，十波罗蜜中，方便波罗蜜片多，欲非不行，但随力随分，随分。Okay. Here it is in English. Now, what we're going to do in English, because of the distance and the technology involved, doing the call and response is a little bit of a challenge to get the timing right. So instead of that, I'm going to put my palms together again and invite you all to read along with me in unison. Okay? Let's all read in unison. We're starting with the line that goes, disciples of the Buddha. Okay? Here we go. Ready? Together? Disciples of the Buddha. In the same way, the light of the moon and stars cannot match the light of the sun, which light can completely dry up the muddy lowlands in southern Jambudvipa. The bodhisattva on the stage of distant travel is like that too, in that none of the two vehicles are able to match him. He can dry up completely the muddy lowlands of sentient beings' delusions. This bodhisattva among the 10 paramitas emphasizes the paramita of expedience. It's not that he fails to cultivate the others, but he only does so according to his strength and his ability. All right. Okay, now, where are we? We are in the refrain portion. I used the word boilerplate last time. Doesn't sound quite right. The refrain, the chorus part of the 7th ground of the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattva's teachings here in Avatamsaka Sutra. And every one of the grounds, from 1 through 10, has parts that repeat, just the way a chorus or a refrain repeats in a song. You know, E-I-E-I-O, right? Old MacDonald had a farm. And every verse, you wind up with E-I-E-I-O in MacDonald. And the chorus is the refrain also is a theme that simply repeats. In the Avatamsakas, 10 grounds, there's a piece of every one of the grounds that repeats at the end. It's not exactly the same. It increases progressively as you go from ground 1 up to ground 10. So now we're in 7. And we found out last week how many Buddhas appear in front of the Bodhisattva on the 7th ground. Well, he sees more than the Bodhisattva on the 1st ground. We also found out about the Bodhisattvas, the analogy of gold that comes back ground after ground, chapter after chapter, where the Bodhisattva is likened to gold that is progressively refined. And unless you're a goldsmith, unless you're a jewelry maker, you probably don't know, the way I didn't know, what gold was like, right? Why would that be used? Well, first of all, it's a rare metal because it comes out of the ground in small quantities. And so because there's not much of it, it's considered to be very valuable. And I mentioned last week about going to the Louvre Museum in Paris and looking at crown jewels. I forget which king or emperor of France had contributed, had his crown jewels wind up in the Louvre, but there they were. And the gold on the crown itself was rough. I don't see much gold, maybe little tiny bits of it. I'd never seen a quantity of gold worked into something of value. And here was a crown. And the crown was studded with pearls and rubies and emeralds, and I don't think there were any diamonds, but there were other precious stones there. And the settings were also made of gold, and they were really rough. I was amazed to see how elemental the gold looked. But here in the sutra, the gold progressively gets worked on. And what happens is it gets finer and finer. So gold is not all 24 karat. 24 carat is used to measure the quality of the gold. Only the finest gold that has been pounded and pounded and pounded and put in the fire and pulled back out, the gold doesn't reduce, but the impurities in it leave the gold. So the more you put it into the fire, the more often you fire the gold and then hammer it carefully, the more pure the gold becomes. Likewise, okay, analogy, flip over to the other side. Likewise, the bodhisattva, the more pressure is put on the bodhisattva, the more his samadhi, the more his wisdom, and in this case, the more his expedient means emerge from his or her nature. Okay, so let's look at something we understand. Maybe musical talent, for example. If your child has musical talent, there are different ways of thought about what you do with that kid to train the child. One method of thought is to say, "Oh, play your heart out. Just give us your heart. That's enough." And if a child is encouraged at a young age to play their heart out and isn't taught the fundamentals, isn't given a foundation in technique or in scales or in reading or in pedaling or even in Italian, you have to learn how to read molto, and presto. You have to learn to read those things. Then maybe the kid will play emotional, evocative music the rest of their life, but they'll never get beyond a certain stage because why? Their foundation wasn't in place. Whereas, on the other hand, if a child is encouraged to play with feeling and to hear the music, but is taught foundational stuff, the fingering, reading music, learning how to pedal, learning the background of the music they're playing, then that child later, when it comes time to play your heart out, will be able to play any kind of challenge, fast or slow, all the different emotions that composers put into the music will be able to come from that child's fingers. Why? They were put back in the fire, just like the goldsmith, right? So it's not a lot of fun when your buddies are out riding their bikes and playing baseball and going to the malt shop, and you're sitting at the keyboard or sitting with your violin in your hands or your trombone, and you have to do scales. Oh, I don't want to do scales. Just think about the future. So 2 ways of thinking about training children. The key word is what? Discipline. It sounds kind of harsh. What else could it be? Foundation. What else could it be? Technique, training, all those words. And it's the wise parent who finds a way to make sure the kid gets that foundation without making them hate piano. Oh, hate the violin, right? Hate the cello. That's a trick. It's a challenge. But the payoff in the future is beautiful music played along the whole range of expression. So the bodhisattva, by analogy, right, gets thrown back into the furnace, gets smelted. And as in the future, when the fire burns hot, the bodhisattva can stand. They shine brighter because they've already been through the fire. Amen. Our teacher, Master Shren Hua, was an excellent goldsmith of young people, of the gold in young people. He could bring out their qualities because he put them back on the fire repeatedly. Ho, ho. Oh my goodness, did he ever. So it's hard to see your kid, like be unhappy because he hasn't finished every exercise. But a little bit of skillful training at that time pays big dividends later. Okay, you get the point. So what's our analogy here? We're at the part of our refrain, our chorus, the boilerplate of each ground, where the bodhisattva is being compared to the two vehicles. And it kind of had to chuckle. We haven't heard that much about the two vehicles, especially not critically. And on the night that we hear about two vehicles, there is Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi sitting in the front row, who is certainly one of the most respected elders in the Theravada tradition, which celebrates the two vehicles, right? And here's the Avatamsaka Sutra saying, none of those two vehicles can match up to this bodhisattva. I'm thinking, that's kind of funny that part of the sutra comes out when we've got, our Theravada Dharma brother, our senior Dharma brother, there listening. He is such a graceful and wise bhikkhu, that he didn't blink. He understands that there's a way to use that kind of information that doesn't harm, doesn't harm the relations between, and it's not meant as a slam. And so, can we turn the lights on? So people recall how I explained that? I explained it as not pointing at individuals, that this is a two vehicles cultivator person. Instead, it was pointing to thoughts in my mind, thoughts that are, characteristic of someone who is full of doubts, or of someone who quits on their own potential, who stops too short. And that can happen to me. So it's not that, oh, you're a two vehicles person. It's that I myself can have thoughts characteristic of two vehicles, characteristic of someone who aims too low, who quits too soon, someone who succumbs to doubts in the mind, who listens to those voices instead of challenging them with proper dharma. So that's the way I explain it. I don't know if anybody caught my clever and skillful interpretation at that point. I thought so. Okay. Disciples of the Buddha, in the same way, the light of the moon and stars can't match the light of the sun. The light of the sun can completely dry up the muddy lowlands in southern Jambudvipa. Moon can't do that, stars can't do that. The Bodhisattva on the stage of Yuan Xing Di, distant travel, is like that. None of the two vehicles can match him. He can dry up the muddy lowlands of sentient beings' delusions. Oh boy. So here's another natural metaphor. Interesting, huh? Sutra says, sun dries up mud. Bodhisattva dries up delusions. All right. The muddy lowlands in southern Jambudvipa, where would that be? That's a little bit south of New Orleans, right? That's right, yeah. Muddy lowlands. That's maybe it's Toledo. Toledo, Ohio used to be known as Frog Town back in its early days because the Lake Erie had not been tamed yet, and so Toledo used to get wet a lot, lots of frogs, muddy lowlands. But time and tides, and so Toledo, Frogtown became Toledo, and Lake Erie obeyed its boundaries. So was that the Bodhisattva's sunlight? No, but we get the picture anyway. So now, next piece, Okay, next piece here of the 10 grounds is Bodhisattva's connection to the 10 paramitas. Those of you who study the Dharma will have heard the word paramita, and usually we hear about six paramitas, right? Liu Boromi, also called the Liu Du, the 6 ways across. And a lot of our sutra is based upon the structure of the 6, right? Generosity or giving, and virtue or precepts, and then that's the first pair, and then patience, kshanti paramita, and then vigor. Patience and vigor are a pair. And then another pair, dhyana samadhi, meditation, and wisdom, prajna wisdom. So those 6 paramitas in Sanskrit are fun to say. It's dana paramita, generosity, and shila paramita, virtue, precepts, then kshanti paramita, patience, and then virya paramita. Virya is often translated as strength, not just vigor. So strength is innate, vigor is when you apply it, right? So qi and yong. Then what? Dhyana paramita, it's meditation, concentration, and then prajna paramita, perfections, ways to go across. Okay, now our Avatamsaka Sutra gives us 4 more. 4 more. Let me see if I can. Where's my notes page? Let's see. Here's the notes. So I've got this is helpful to know because this is how Buddha Dharma grows. Okay, paramitas, paramita. English adds the S. So we've got expedience, strength, vows, and knowledge. So this would be upaya, this would be bala, this would be, what is vows in Sanskrit? And knowledge is jnana, and that in, see if I can do that in, see, jnana. There we go, jnana. Vows. Who can help me with the Sanskrit for vows? What's the, think of Erstor. He is Maha, what is Erstor? Da Yuan, Bizang Wang Pusan. We need our Sanskrit expert. Jin Chuan, sure, if you're there. Anybody online can help me out. What's the paramita of vows? Connie got her hand up. Do we know what that is? What's vows in Sanskrit? It's...
Online it says it's pratitya. Pratitja. Is that right? Pratitja? Pratitja?
No, I don't think so. We'll come up with it. Somebody will. That's a good. Thank you for that attempt. I don't know if that's the right word. It's the Sanskrit word is yuan, right? So, yuan.
法师, some online says pratitja.
Pratitya, that's right, huh? Connie was right. Pratitya.
Pratijja.
J-O.
Pratijja.
J-J-A.
Yes.
Pratitya. Okay. All right. Thank you, Connie. You got it right. Sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody else can come up with another word. I'm not familiar with that. Anyway, so look at what we got here. These are 4, let's see, we'll call these the 10.
Also another comment says VRATA.
Vrata. Okay, there's another word. All right, great. 6 paramitas, add 4 more, and you have the Avatamsaka's list of 10. Our sutra is famous for 10s. 10 is perfection. 10 is completion. Okay. So we got the paramita of expedient means, upaya, paramita of strength, paramita of vows, paramita of knowledge. Okay. Got it? So far so good. And let's take a look at our text. This bodhisattva, among the 10 paramitas, emphasizes the paramita of expedient means. It's not that he fails to cultivate the others, but he only does so according to his strength and his, the Chinese says, fun, or fun, right? 水力, 水分, fourth tone or first tone? Fun, 还是分? 水力, 水分吧? 分数, 分数, fourth tone, 分数. 分数, okay, so first tone. Okay, first tone. 水力肥, 水分. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that the bodhisattva is a typical bodhisattva. And what does that mean? Bodhisattvas cultivate according to the paramitas. That's kind of the way Master Hua was explained it. These are practices that bodhisattvas use as they teach us. Okay? Those 10 that I mentioned. And yet, in the 10 grounds, this is very much a teaching text. This is an instruction book for bodhisattvas. And at this point, the bodhisattva is using expedient means. What does that mean? Expedient means how are you going to get somebody to listen to you, take your advice, put it into practice, and get results and change? Well, the answer is, how good are your expedient means? Okay? This bodhisattva's job is teaching. He already has gone through emptiness. This bodhisattva has gone through that 6th stage, which in the paramitas is wisdom, right? But as we looked at the Avatamsaka, the bodhisattva learned about the 12 links and how nothing exists until, out of ignorance, you do something. Once you do something, once you set things in motion, those 12 links create all the trouble, all the way to death and suffering, and misery and pain. Nothing's going on. Everything is quiet and full and tranquil. And then living beings, out of ignorance comes that urge. We move, right? We act. And then 就说, 起祸造业受果报. Delusion arises, we make karma, and then retribution comes. 起祸造业受果报. Where did it come from? I just don't know. It came out of ignorance. I don't know. Wu Ming, that's where it came from. And we do that. So the Bodhisattva saw that and realized all the suffering comes from Wu Ming, from not knowing, from the darkness of our minds and our past karma, our habits and our tendencies. Right there, that's where it comes from. So that's what the Bodhisattva observed, said, I'm going to break up ignorance. So she did that by increasing virtue, increasing blessings, increasing samadhi, and ignorance broke apart. And all of creation came to a standstill, came to a stop, because ignorance was over. So the 12 links stopped moving. What happened next? Oh my goodness, emptiness. And the Bodhisattva had to deal with that. We've been saying this a lot, right? That as the Bodhisattva gets to this stage, you have to relearn everything you thought you knew. Because it's different now. You're in the mundane world, and you're also beyond the mundane world. And that's hard to abide. You think you're crazy a lot, because you see, you kind of like you pull the veil aside and you can see beyond the curtain that before always kept you in the dark. And so the Bodhisattva's been doing that. They've been allowing this new wisdom to guide their steps. And what pulls them through? This key, stick with me here. I know I'm moving in a direction, but stay with me. What keeps the Bodhisattva on the path so that they don't go crazy? In a single word, it's their heart. Their heart is connected to living beings suffering. And that's their focus now. Not, am I happy? Are things working out? You know, am I going to have fun today? You know, am I making money? That's the things that motivate most of us, right, during the day. Bodhisattvas, that doesn't move them anymore. That's not it anymore. That's not what they're living for. Just being happy, getting rid of pain, you know, having fun today. It's not. Their motive now, because they've seen through the emptiness of self and dharmas, their motive is to help people in their pain. That's the heart, keeps them going. So what do? They need a way to teach. So you got the motive, I want to help people get through their pain, but they're not listening to me. They don't pay attention to me. They don't do what I say. Why not? Need some expedient means. There we go. Now we're back. Okay. So this bodhisattva is good at learning how to teach so that beings listen. Beings pay attention. What's it like? Oh my goodness. People know maybe that I've been spending time in Australia working on Master Hua's biography in the West after our teacher, Shang Xuan Xia Hua, Master Xuan Hua, after he came to America in 1962. What was that like? Well, here's a teacher who's got these vows to bring the Buddha Dharma to America. And it's interesting because how he did that. First thing he did was send 2 disciples to prepare a place for him. And the 2 disciples were sisters, the Tam sisters, Stella and Madalena. Han Guozheng and Han Guoshi, 2 good Dharma friends. These young women were in Hong Kong and had taken refuge in Master Hua at age 11 for Madalena, and I guess it was maybe 13 for Stella, something like that. So they were long-term disciples. They came to America, tried to find places for Shifu to stay, and as it turns out, from 1962 until 1967, the name of the place where Master Hua lived and taught was the Fojiao Jiangtang, Sanfang Shi Fojiao Jiangtang, the San Francisco Buddhist Lecture Hall. How many of them were there? 6. 6 different places in 5 years that Master Hua was teaching. And the reason for that was all kinds of reasons you wouldn't imagine, right? Like losing your lease, and like having the basement simply become too small, so you have to move to another place, etc., right? Well, here's how hard things were back then, and why Master Hua needed that kind of strong resolve based on heart. So he said, I was reading yesterday the story of place number 5, which was Sutter and Webster. This is a house in what is now called Japantown in San Francisco. It's the Fillmore district back then, and which was, kind of a slum. And Master Hua moved out there. Why? He left Chinatown, where he'd been for 1, 2, 3, 4 places. He left Chinatown because Westerners weren't coming into Chinatown to listen to him speak Dharma. And his vows were to teach Westerners. So he moved to a 4-story house on Sutter Street in Webster, run down. Master Hua was the landlord, living on the 1st floor. And he, sure enough, occasionally Westerners would come in. But Shifu says it was kind of hard, and it took a lot of patience, because one day 3 young men came in on a Sunday, and I was explaining the Vajra Sutra, and they came in, and one of them sat on the floor and then lay down and went to sleep. And the second one laid back and had his arm around his girlfriend. And the third one put his feet up on the table and decided to have a conversation with his friends with his feet up. And so he said, I understood that they didn't know how to listen to a sutra, so I was just patient with them. But their Westerners are hard to teach, he said. So imagine, here's Master Hua, who is a meditation master, to say the least. Someone who has dragons for his disciples and bodhisattva, someone who's just the Dharma heir, carrying Bodhidharma's transmission forward in the West. And he can't get anybody to listen to him. And if they listen to him, they put their feet up on the table, showing zero respect or understanding for what's really going on. Tough, huh? Gotta be patient. Oh, what kind of expedient means do you come up with? So this bodhisattva, among the 10 paramitas, emphasizes the paramita of expedience. He also cultivates the others, but he does so as he is able and according to his position. Okay, there we go. Mary, you had a question. Remember what it was? No? Okay, that question. So, anybody got a comment or a question now that we come this far into our text? I'm looking at everybody in Berkeley. We've got monks and lay women, lay men. It's the last day of the Guanyin session at City of 10,000 Buddhas, and I think a lot of us are probably making our way back from Yucaya. Anybody got questions here? No? Online, any questions about paramitas or expedience or how hard it is to speak the Dharma and you're the first one? Nobody knows what you're doing? All right, let's go forward then. Let's continue with our story of bodhisattvas on the 7th ground. Here we go. Okay, here's our text. We're going to read, let's see here. Okay, we're now turning to page 74. I don't know if you all have the same one, but it's 佛子是名要说, okay? Let's see. We'll go down to 一切智智。佛子是名要说菩萨摩诃萨第7原行地。菩萨住此地，多作自在天王，善为众生说正智法，令其正入，不失爱欲，利恨同事。如是一切诸所作业，皆不离念佛，乃至不离念具足一切种，一切智智。Okay, there we go. Here it is. Disciples of the Buddha. This has been a general discussion of the Bodhisattva Mahasattva's 7th ground, the stage of distant travel. When a Bodhisattva stays upon this ground, he most often becomes a king of the heaven of self-mastery, who is skilled at explaining for sentient beings the methods for realizing wisdom, so that they can learn and master them. In terms of generosity, kind speech, service, and collaboration, in all the deeds he does, he never leaves mindfulness of the Buddha, up to and including never leaving mindfulness of endowment with the wisdom of many modes of omniscience. All right. So this is the refrain. It's kind of, we've heard this pattern before, and the sutra is always changing and always different. A couple weeks ago, we were there trying to describe this profound mental challenge, the psychological difficulty when your meditation has gone beyond your experience, right? Your meditation takes you to a place where you can't use your common sense. You can't use your intelligence. You can't use your sense of humor. You just have to grit it out. You have to be really patient and keep your vows in mind. That was last week, 2 weeks ago. Now, here we are, reading through what happens to the bodhisattva as he or she gets to this seventh ground and masters it. This has been a general discussion of the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, seventh ground, the stage of distant travel. When a bodhisattva is here, when you're on this stage, you have a day job. Bodhisattva becomes a Deva king, a Deva Raja. Okay, look at that. So what I get from that is bodhisattvas have identities, and yet, because they secretly or invisibly, they are actually bodhisattvas. Externally, what do they look like? They look like a deva, like a god. What is the heaven of self-mastery? This is called the Tzitzai, and the Sanskrit for this, I looked it up. Sanskrit for this is Nirmana Rataya. Heaven. Nirmana Rataya. That's my Sanskrit font is kind of funky there, so sorry about that. This is Kamadhatu, is the desire realm. Desire realm has 6 heavens in it. Interesting, huh? Buddhist cosmology. This is the way the map of the heavens works. Kind of like, what do we say? We say, okay, sun, what's next? Mercury, what's next? Venus, what's next? It's the planet Earth. Aha, that's our home. Next, Mars, next, Saturn, next, Jupiter, next, Saturn, next, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the various asteroids, etc. Okay, that's our own solar system's cosmology. That's how our solar system is built. In the Buddhist cosmology, likewise, and they say all you have to do is open your wisdom. If you can kai wu yan and use liu tong, you'll see this is really how things are. You see that there are 6 heavens. There are 3 realms and 6 heavens. Heaven of the 4 kings, heaven of the 33 gods, heaven of well divided time, the Tushita heaven, forgotten what Tushita means. The heaven of self-mastery, that's where we are right now, where our bodhisattva is. And then, skip one. There we go. And then finally, the heaven of bliss derived from others' happiness. I love the way to say this in Sanskrit. The Parinimita Bhashavartan heaven. There we go. Say that fast 3 times. So 6 heavens, and all in the desire realm. And that's interesting because why? Sunday school didn't tell me about all that. Sunday school says there's one heaven and one God, God on high. And so here are the Buddhists maintaining that they're not just one God, there's multiple gods, and there's 6 heavens. And this is only one realm. You go to the next realm, the form realm, and then the next realm after that, the formless realm. And you've got 28 more levels of gods, and then 4 more levels of God. So this is, they say, when you open your wisdom, when your wisdom starts to function, everybody has it potentially, but when yours starts to function, that's what you see. This is how it is. You see Mount Sumeru with the sun and the moon around it, and 4 oceans of fragrant water, etc., etc. So, now, what's really interesting for me, okay, so did I grow up knowing this? Nope. I grew up, like everybody else, just, reading the books that came to me and hearing the stories of the culture. And yet, if someone starts to dig around, poke around, what you discover, Greek mythology, Hindu mythology, some aspects of Phoenician stories and astrology correspond in profound ways with the Buddhist description of the natural world. You might say the supernatural world, nature plus, right? Nature plus wisdom. So, for example, if you look at some of the beings that live, according to these stories, on Mount Sumeru, you discover devas struggling with who? Asuras. That's one of the Buddhist stories, right? You have the Asura always out there fighting with the devas for power in the heavens. And the devas, our sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, has an amazing, amazing chapter where it talks about how the chief of gods in the heaven of the 33 gods, whose name is Shakra Devanam Indra, what does he do? He has some Shantong psychic powers. How does he use them? He transforms his body into an awesome, fearsome warrior whose eyes are shooting thunderbolts and whose hand is holding a Vajra pestle that shoots lightning out. And all these different, I think he transforms 1,000 hands, and each one is holding a pestle, this fearsome weapon. And every single one of the Asuras who are attacking and trying to throw the gods out of the heavens sees 1,000 chakras coming directly at him. And of course he goes, oh my God, I'm not going to mess with that. Gone. Runs away to fight another day. Right? And who says this? The Avatamsaka Sutra tells us stories about warfare in the heavens and how Chakra uses his Shantong to fake, right, to show, mock up this awesome appearance to scare away the Asuras. And, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you think, ha, 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 those Buddhists with their old stories. Well, then you pick up something like Edith Hamilton. People know that one? Edith Hamilton wrote a history of Greek mythology that was really popular and sold a lot of books. And everybody I knew who investigated, the stories of the Greek gods would at some point run across Edith Hamilton's writing. So what did she write about? She said, oh yes, back in those days, Mount Olympus was the polar mountain for the Hellenistic civilization, and the gods, the Greek gods, of which we know their names and a lot, would be on Mount Olympus, and who would come and fight with them for authority and power? The Titans. And then she would describe the Titans, this race of beings that, as she described them, looked every bit like Asuras. And here were the Titans trying to knock the Greek gods off of Mount Olympus, the same way the Asuras try to knock the Devas off of Mount Sumeru. You go, that's interesting. Here are these ancient stories kind of meshing. Maybe, did they compare notes when they thought them up? No, of course not. Where do these ancient root stories of our civilization come from? Well, the Hellenistic world was really close to the Indian world. right? Alexander the Great and his conquering armies went to India, and he was a young man, right? So we also have Buddhist sutras, the teachings of King Menander, right? That clearly the Greek king was talking to a Buddhist monk and asking him wisdom questions, recorded in called the Milinda Panha, the teachings of King Milinda. It's a conversation between a Greek king and a Buddhist monk. So, gee whiz, I wonder if these stories really, are somehow lodged down there in the deep recesses of our collective mind. So interesting. So here we are. We have the Avatamsaka Sutra telling us what? Telling us that this bodhisattva has a day job, like I said. This bodhisattva is a bodhisattva, but his incarnation is as a deva. He's a king on that fifth level of desire heaven existences, which is a very wonderful, blissful place to be. However, it's still within mortality. But what does that bodhisattva do? He is explaining how to 做正知, how to realize wisdom, how to certify to that stage of wisdom so that they can learn and master. So he's speaking Dharma in the heavens. All right. So there you are. You're a deva. You're way up there in the heavens. And you've got a buddy who's speaking Dharma for you, telling you how to cultivate. Looks like a deva, but he's secretly in disguise a bodhisattva god. How about that? Isn't that interesting? It's like that he's actually a bodhisattva, but he's appearing in a reincarnation as a deva. That's kind of neat. Never thought of that before. Okay, check this out. In terms of generosity, kind speech, service, and collaboration, in all the deeds that he does, he never leaves mindfulness of a list of stuff. That's why we have this Naijir here. Mindfulness of the Buddha, up to and including, never leaving mindfulness of wisdom, omniscience. This is a long name. This, how does it go? It's 一切具足, 一切种, 一切智智, right? All kinds of wisdom's wisdom. The wisdom of wisdoms, you just say omniscience. Okay, so what is that? Let me go to my notes page here. This is the neat thing about teaching from the computer, is I get to pop in all these notes. If I'm sitting there at the table on the altar in the Buddha hall, I don't get to use my fingers and show you stuff on the notes page. So, my kinds of mindfulness. Okay, there is a list in the Buddha Dharma of things the Bodhisattva keeps in mind. One is the Buddha, no surprise, huh? Another is the Dharma, no surprise. Another is the Sangha. Okay, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, 3 jewels. Another is devas. Another is generosity. And the third one is the sixth one. What's number 6? Giving and giving, generosity, and so wisdom. Okay, here it is. I think it's probably, now there are different lists. There's a different number of things that the Bodhisattva is. I think it's called Liu Nian. If anybody wants to look it up, maybe somebody's quick online and they can Liu Nian. They can correct me. Here's your chance to correct the Fasher. 6 kinds of mindfulness. Maybe somebody can check it out online. Correct me here. But the list that I knew included, and that the one that the Bodhisattva is this one only, ultimate wisdom. What does it mean? This means, here you go, Bodhisattva going around doing stuff all day long, never forgets Buddha, being kind. never forgets the Dharma, having principle, never forgets the Sangha, being in harmony, never forgets generosity or giving, which is the basis of all practice, never forgets devas who don't suffer much. They have a life of bliss and that keeps you calm and serene, and then never forgets to use wisdom. Okay, all the time. This bodhisattva, no matter what to do, talking on the phone to their sister, right? Or driving to pick up their kids at soccer, or, sitting, waiting for the train. These thoughts, these awarenesses guide their actions. Isn't this nice? This is kind of like your creed, okay? 六种人念. And they're always thinking of these things. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, generosity, devas, and wisdom. 念佛, 念法, 念僧, 念师, 念天, 念慧, I think the last one. Maybe somebody can check me. Jerry, maybe you've got somebody online who's quick with the 6 kinds of mindfulness. All right, check it out here. Here's another nifty list. It says, in terms of doing these things, the Bodhisattva always keeps those 6 things in mind. Check this out. These are called the 4 kinds of gathering in dharmas, literally. 四摄法. All right, but what do we say? 4 ways to bring beings around you. Okay, to gather beings around you. Okay, 四摄法. Here we go. Chinese 四, 1, 2, 3, 4, 摄摄摄法. This is one of the early versions of what bodhisattvas use to teach living beings. It's one of the early expedients. Okay, look at the list. Here they are. If you want people to hang out with you, if you want people to draw near so you can teach them, because that's the purpose of this, you got to attract them. How are you going to attract them? Here we go. First thing you do is you give to them. Generosity. 布施, right? You give to them. You are generous. You say, come over for lunch. And when they come for lunch, you got food to eat. There's stuff they like. And you make sure that they get their fill. So you're generous to them. And of course, what happens is people remember you. They come back. Okay, the next one that you use in order to get people to like you and to stick around you is 爱语, it's called. Kind speech. You speak pleasantly. You speak nice words to them. People like your voice. They like to hear the things you say. You make them think of things they never thought before. So they get all kinds of benefit from talking to you. So 爱语, it's a 四摄, 4种的摄受法. Number 3 is 同事. So similar work. I'm sorry, 利亨. This one is 利亨. You serve them. Things that benefit. 利亨. The things you do actually help them. Right? So I translated that as service. You are always finding a way to make their lives easier. Before they know it, you got the thing that they were looking for, right? You can hand it to them because you can predict what they're going to need. Oh, me, huh? Then the last one is 同事. You work together. You collaborate with them. So if you do that, if you say, oh, hey, let's try this together. I'll bring the ice, you bring the bottle, the can opener. Then together we'll hoist a couple wet ones, right? So 4 ways to gather beings around. 四摄法. These are fundamental bodhisattvas dharmas. Before expedience, right? This is, never mind expedience. This is This is just basic. If you want people to like you, suppose you're a teacher. Suppose you're a neighbor. Suppose you're a team leader at work and you want to build team spirit. What's the best thing to do? First, give to them. Show that you're a generous person. The next thing is when you talk, speak in a kind way. Speak in a way that doesn't hurt their ears. Right? And then be of service. Li heng, li xing. Okay? They know that when you show up, their job is going to be easier. And then collaboration. You're a team player. Boy, these are so, this is Buddhist psychology. 4 kinds of gathering in dharmas. Let's not do the Chinglish. That's Chinglish translation. 4 ways to gather beings around you. Generosity, kind speech, service, and collaboration. No matter what the Bodhisattva is doing, it says, when he's doing these things, the Bodhisattva is always mindful of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, generosity, the state in the heavens, and wisdom. Okay? So, in terms of generosity, kind speech, service, and collaboration, in all the deeds he does, he never leaves mindfulness of the Buddhas up to and including, never leaving, mindfulness of great wisdom. Being endowed, 具足一种, 一切种, 一切智智. That's the long name for wisdom. Okay, there's a question. When the Asuras fight with the Devas, is anybody killed during the battle? The sutra, it's actually a good question. And it usually ends with the Asuras running away. Chakra scares them away. I don't know of any single instance in a Buddhist sutra where blood is shed, where there's any actual harming. You look at the pilgrimage of Sudana, Shansai Tongzi, right? Sudana goes out to find his teacher, and he meets 53 teachers, and a couple of the encounters are really, really scary. There's one where is it a Brahmin? His name is Insatiable, and no, he's a king. And Sudana goes and there's an iron fort, and behind the walls of the fortress come all these horrible cries, all these screams of anguish, all these blood-chilling shouts and deathly rattles, horrible sounds. And Sudana says, this cannot be a good and wise advisor. He's doing horrible things to the people in his country. How can this be Shan Zhishi, Kalyana Mitra, a good spiritual friend? And the Devas come down and say, oh, no, don't doubt him. Don't doubt him for a minute. This is truly a skillful bodhisattva who uses expedient wisdom, just like our bodhisattva does. And Sudana says, what? How can this be? I heard it with myself. There's terrible things going on inside that wall. And so the king himself comes out, and he escorts Sudana into his palace. And of course, Sudana is like shivering in his boots. He doesn't know if he's the next one who's going to be strung up on the rack or quartered and torn apart by horses. So he looks around, and the palace of this king is a beautiful place, just decorated with every kind of fantastic, light-filled, beautiful ornament, no shadows at all. And he says, how can this be? And the king says, good advice, good man, he says. Shan Nanzi, he says, good man. Don't you know that in my country there are not lots of good people? My country is full of people who have really coarse, rough natures, and they're very hard to teach, very hard to train. So behind the wall of my prison, I have set up a play. I've set up a show of people suffering, so that the people of my country will know, they'll hear that, and it will frighten them into being good. He said, this is the jail. You're in it right now. And of course, it's a beautiful place where no one's coming to harm. It's all a show. It's a play. It's a mock show to get the desired result, the expedient result of people following the rules. So Sudana goes, oh, this is really a good bodhisattva, a good and wise advisor. What a skillful expedient means that is, he said. So even in those situations, nobody actually sheds blood. Bodhisattvas don't want to increase their heavy karma. Okay, another question here. Shifu says that Shakradevanam Indra is the god of Christianity. He says, my question, how about the god of Islam? Who is Allah, the god of Islam? I don't know the answer to that. That didn't come up in our series of lectures. So can't answer. And you have to be careful taking teachings out of context. Now, when Shifu was identifying devas, and he's talking about the heavens, he said, in fact, Shakradevanam Indra is Lord God. Okay, the very same. Oh my goodness. And then he would teach about that. And so when Shifu explained that, he didn't do it in a way to diminish the God of the Christians and to put Buddha on top. That was not the purpose. And if there had been anybody in the audience who was, devoutly Christian, I think Shifu probably would have found another time to give that teaching. So for people who understand the way Buddhist cosmology is set up, you can speak expediently, you can speak directly. Okay? So if the things you say are going to turn people off and to make them feel like you are competing with them, that's called 不方便. That's inexpedient, right? That's a non-paya. So now in terms of Allah and Buddhist teachings on Allah, actually Islam is a relatively new religion. These sutras have been around for thousands and thousands of years. And Islam, as it's taught in the Holy Quran, doesn't have that long a history. So the sutras predated the emergence of that form of worship. So there wouldn't be any mention here of Islamic equivalent deities. Okay? All right. Any more questions? Comments? Yeah. Okay. That's the second list. That's the other collection. Okay. Say it again, Jerry. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Okay, there it is. Okay, so this is another set of 6. Buddha Dharma Sangha, and then precepts, say morality, precepts, and then renunciation, sure, and then devas. Okay. 佛法僧戒舍天. Okay, that's another list. That's another list. And this one is Sangha-centric for renunciation. Okay? Great, thank you for that. These, when you get the longer lists, you discover that they have been in the body of teaching for years and pass through the commentaries a lot. So I know that Jin Fosher, when he's preparing his lectures on the the Wuliang Shou Jing, the Buddha of limitless lifespan. Sometimes you have to check a couple commentaries to get the full story, because otherwise you find you tried your best and you've given your speech, and then somebody goes, you know what, you told us wrong. That's a mistake in there, and so that's a source of unhappiness, right? So what do you say? You say, this teaching has been here among people for a very, very long time. And we get it in English, passed on through Chinese, but the Chinese got it from Sanskrit, and in some cases in Pali. And so think of all the hands and all the minds that this has been passed through. And you know that different schools come and go. For example, back in the Tang Dynasty, worship of Maitreya was huge. Maitreya was the big Buddha to come. So there was lots of practice based on Maitreya, not so much on Amitabha. Nowadays, who hears about Maitreya practice? Pretty much nobody. And Amitabha is the dominant practice. So interesting that any body of knowledge and set of practices that have been around for thousands times 2.5 of years they are influenced by the culture as they influence each culture. That's kind of neat. And so there's, Shifu would say, 活到老,学到老,还有3分学不到. So we live a long time, we want to study our whole lives. Okay, gee whiz. Let me do one more sentence, okay? One more sentence in our text. We're going to continue here. Don't stop. The next one is 复作是念，我当与一切众生为首为圣，乃至为一切智智意志者. Further, he reflects, I should be a leader among sentient beings. I should be sublime up to and including being one with wisdom upon whom others can rely. Okay. Bodhisattva is challenging himself or herself to persevere. As the Book of Changes says, the I Ching, it says, perseverance furthers. I need to keep my vigor strong so that other living beings can rely upon me for consistent guidance. My compass will give you north 10 times out of 10. You're looking for north so you know where you are? I'll show you north. You can calculate, you can navigate reliably from here. So how nice to not be moved, right? And you think, oh yeah, what's the big deal? Well, things must be good for you. If things are good for you, you don't really need to find somebody you can rely on. What about when things go wrong? As they occasionally do. When the storms come, boy, is it good to have somebody upon whom you can rely, right? So you have to have been around the block a couple times to be able to appreciate what's missing and how nice it is to not have things go wrong. You know, kids, mostly it's like, oh, things are good, I'll be young forever. Doesn't matter if I drive my drive my dune buggy up to the top of that sand dune that looks, you know, it'll never tip over. Ooh. Yeah, the light is red. Well, that's okay. I'm checking the station on my iPhone. Oops. So, yeah, kids don't think about, it's harder to appreciate. Or kids in adults' bodies, right? 40-year-old adolescents, hard to appreciate, storing up for the winter. But as they will tell you in Game of Thrones, winter is coming. So it's good to store up. All right. Let us do something now. I would like to transfer the merit, and then I have a story to tell, like I told you about. And I'm going to ask Sam to hand me my guitar. And where's our dedication merit? Right here. There it is. So if you have it there on your chanting sheet in Berkeley, that's the very same dedication of merit. And okay, send out your goodness wherever you would like it to have its biggest effect. Here we go. May every living being, our bonds as one, and with life share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow meet their fruit. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into heaven. May all become compassion and one. May all become compassion and one. Okay, may that be so. And here we go. Story goes like this. I was cleaning up my folder the other day on my drive, and I discovered a story that I remembered that had moved me so much back when I first heard it. And one of the topics I was in conversation with a friend the other day was about the power of music. And I've been noticing that. Earlier today, I took part in a called Awakened Kids Circle from Santa Clara. Down, this is part of service space, and it's an attempt to bring young ones. There was 10 kids, the oldest of which was 10 years old. Bring them together to teach them to meditate and to appreciate kindness. And man, was it chaotic and noisy and fun. It looked like fun. I was on Skype, and everybody, was going through a TV down in Santa Clara. And these kids were noisy and running around, crying. And so I had, here I am on two-dimensional screen, kind of like I am right now in Berkeley. And I had to get their attention, so what did I do? I picked up my banjo. And I started to play Guanyin Bodhisattva on the banjo. And the kids all came around to look and stare. And I caught them. And then the things I was saying, they kind of, you could see it wasn't, they were being polite because their parents were there. But when I started to sing, they all got quiet and they all listened. So I sang to them about, thank you to the universe, thank you to the earth and sky. I may not repay my parents' kindness, but every day I try. Right? And these kids are like, okay. So when you put music on it, the right and left brain work together. So what about the power of music? I found a story from the day after 9/11, and I put it on the screen right here, and I'm going to read it because it's powerful. This, I believe, I don't know where it was posted. It might have been New York Times or a blog. This is a man named William Harvey, a student at Juilliard. this Juilliard School, America, maybe the world's foremost music conservatory. And he's a violinist. He says, yesterday I had probably the most incredible and moving experience in my life. Juilliard organized a quartet to go play at the Armory. The Armory is a huge military building where families of people missing from Tuesday's disaster, meaning when the World Trade Center was hit by the planes, go to wait for news of their loved ones. Entering the building was very difficult emotionally because the entire building, the size of a city block, was covered with missing posters. Thousands of posters spread out up to 8 feet above the ground, each one featuring a different smiling face. I made my way into the huge central room and found my Juilliard buddies. For 2 hours, we sight-read quartets with 3 people, right? So one part is missing. I don't think I will soon forget the grief counselor from the Connecticut State Police who listened the entire time, or the woman who listened only to memory from cats crying the whole time. At 7, the other 2 players had to leave. They'd been playing at the Armory since 1, and simply couldn't play anymore. I volunteered to stay and play solo since I'd just gotten there. He's a violinist. I soon realized that the evening had just begun for me. A man in fatigues who introduced himself as Sergeant Major asked me if I'd mind playing for his soldiers as they came back from digging through the rubble at Ground Zero. Massoud had volunteered to give his men massages, he said. He didn't think anything would be more soothing than getting a massage and listening to violin music at the same time. So at 9 p.m., remember he arrived at what time? They started playing, his friends left at 7. I soon realized, let's see, at 9 p.m. I headed up to the 2nd floor as the first men were arriving. From then until 11:30, I played everything I could do for memory. Bach, B minor Partita, Tchaikovsky, Concerto, Dvorak, Concerto, Paganini, Caprices, 1 and 17, Vivaldi, Winter and Spring, the theme from Schindler's List, Tchaikovsky Melody, Meditation from Thais' Amazing Grace, My Country 'Tis of Thee, Turkey in the Straw, Boiled in Cabbage is Down, right? From the most honored classical down to folk songs. Never have I played for a more grateful audience. Somehow it didn't matter that by the end, my intonation was shot, I had no bow control. I would have lost any competition I was playing in, but it didn't matter. The men would come up the stairs in full gear, remove their helmets, look at me, and smile. At 11:20 now, at night, I was introduced to Colonel Slack, head of the division. After thanking me, he said to his friends, "Boy, today was the toughest day yet. I made the mistake of going back into the pit, and I'll never do that again." Eager to hear a first-hand account, I asked, "What did you see?" He stopped, swallowed hard, and said, "What you'd expect to see." The colonel stood there as I played a lengthy rendition of Amazing Grace, which he claimed it was the best he'd ever heard. By this time, it was 11:30, and I didn't think I could play anymore. I asked the sergeant major if it would be appropriate if I played the national anthem. He shouted above the chaos of the milling soldiers to call them to attention. And I played the national anthem as the 300 men of the 69th Division saluted an invisible flag. After shaking a few hands and packing up, I was prepared to leave when one of the privates accosted me and told me the colonel wanted to see me again. He took me down to the war room, but we couldn't find the colonel, so he gave me a tour of the war room. It turns out the division I played for is the famous Fighting 69th, the most decorated division in the U.S. Army. He pointed out a letter from Abraham Lincoln offering his condolences after the Battle of Antietam, the Civil War. The 69th suffered the most casualties of any division with that historic battle. Finally, we located the colonel, and after thanking me again, he presented me with the coin of the regiment. We only give these to someone who's done something special for the 69th, he informed me. He called over the division's historian to tell me the significance of all the symbols on the coin. as I rode the taxi back to Juilliard, free of course, since taxi service is free in New York right now, I was numb. Not only was this evening the proudest I've ever felt to be an American, it was my most meaningful as a musician and as a person as well. At Juilliard, kids are hypercritical of each other and very competitive. The teachers expect, and in most cases get, technical perfection. But this wasn't about that. The soldiers didn't care that I'd had so many memory slips I lost count. They didn't care that when I forgot how the second movement of the Tchaikovsky went, I had to come up with my own insipid improvisation until I somehow, and I still don't know how, got to a cadence. I've never seen a more appreciative audience, and I've never understood so fully what it means to communicate music to other people. And how did it change me as a person? Let's just say that next time I want to get into a petty argument about whether Richter or Horowitz was better, I'll remember that when I asked the colonel to describe the pit formed by the tumbling of the towers, he couldn't. Words only go so far, and even music can only go a little further from them. Your friend, William Harvey. So there is a story for you. That's as real life as it gets, right? And it's all about the power of music to do things that, as he says, words can't do. But I also like how he writes that even music can only go a little further. But somehow when we put music and Dharma together, then we've really got something that will strike it deep, and then it's ours. And what's, what the seventh ground doesn't tell us, what we learned in the fifth ground, is when the Bodhisattva gets the attention, let's see, he does the 4 kinds of gathering in. Once he's got somebody's attention, he can't forget what he needs to teach, right? He can't forget the Dharma that he wants to teach. So you have to get some discipline. You've got to get some foundations in there solid. Then when the opportunity arises, somebody trusts you, you can say things that matter, things that count. So indeed, indeed. Okay, Qin Fo Shi or Qin Xian Shi, who's got some announcements for us tonight?
Coming Guanyin section, and morning we have a funeral service. After that afternoon we do the Guanyin, the Guanyin name deciding to the 4 o'clock. So morning from 8:30 to the 4:30. So that is coming Saturday program.
Okay, that's Sunday, right?
One day, Saturday.
Okay, isn't it Saturday in Berkeley now, or is that next week?
Coming Saturday, 25th.
Okay,
Yeah.
1 week from today. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
Else?
No, that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get to our verses next week, our seventh ground verses. So, Qin Fo Shi, you want to lead everybody to bow, and we'll see you all next week. Aum Mito Fo.